Okay, so understand something. For your first 45 days, and especially for your first handful of calls, if you don't have the experience, if you're coming into this brand new like I was, accept that you're not going to know what you're talking about. Accept that there's going to be calls where you probably look maybe a little bit foolish. Maybe you look like you don't know what you're doing because you don't. So accept that. Understand that that's part of the process, and just embrace the fact that you are growing and you are learning on every single call. When I was getting started, I tell my team all the time, we have our call recordings, or all of our calls are recorded and everything. But when I first got started, I didn't have that. I was just making phone calls. And I tell my team all the time, man, I can't even imagine what some of those first calls looked like or sounded like. I probably sounded so dumb, probably had no idea what I was talking about. But obviously that's part of the process. Look where I am now, right? So you can absolutely do that too. But I want to make sure that you understand that I don't think you should go into this immediately like, I'm going to light the world on fire. I'm going to get so many leads. I'm going to get a deal in my first week, right? That can happen. That can absolutely happen. And I've seen it happen. But I think that the most important thing that you can do getting started to set yourself up for success is going to be focusing on the inputs rather than the outputs, right? And an input is something that you control, something that you do that will determine an output down the road, right? You can't control outputs directly. You can only control them through input. So what does that look like? I think the way that I looked at things, instead of counting how many leads I got and getting all excited about the leads and the yeses and stuff like that, my daily goal was to get 50 no's. I wanted to get 50 no's every single day. The reason why I wanted to get 50 no's was because I knew that every time I got a no, and maybe they gave me a question or they asked me a question I didn't know the answer to, or they made me look dumb, every single time I learned, I grew, right? So I was building that skill set, building that confidence to where I knew that if I got 50 no's every single day for weeks and weeks and months, then it was inevitable that I was going to win, right? Because I was going to learn from each of those no's. I was going to learn how to talk better, or how to talk more confidently, how to answer questions more confidently and fluidly, have better conversations. And I just learned as I went. And I got my first deal in a little bit less than 3 months, right? And I've seen people, since I've started working with people, I've seen people get deals in less than 3 weeks. But I always tell them to focus on the inputs rather than the outputs. So obviously get excited when you get a lead. If you have a great conversation with somebody and they say they want to sell, amazing. Celebrate that. Be fired up. But be just as fired up about those people that say no, because you're getting closer to that first yes, right? So my first piece of advice for you, and what I did when I first got started that helped me keep my mind right and kind of be in the right, state of mind, was focusing on the no's instead of the yeses. So your goal is to get X amount of no's every day, and focus on the fact that you are building your skill set, you're building your confidence, and embrace the fact that you're learning. My second piece of advice is going to be, when you are asked a question that you don't know the answer to, or if a seller brings up something that you just have no idea what they're talking about, write it down, look it up, ask somebody. That's what I did when I first got started, and it really helped me learn faster and shorten that learning curve, because every single time that I was made to look, maybe foolish or didn't know what I was talking about, well, I wrote that down. I studied it. I was prepared the next time somebody asked that question. And when you do that over and over and over, there's really only so many questions or ways that conversation can go in, right? So if you get in the habit of doing that every time, you're going to build up a huge bank of memory and knowledge over the course of time. And again, it's going to get you closer to that first deal, and it's going to keep your mind right while you are getting closer to that first deal, versus if you are just out there every day thinking, if I don't get a deal today, or if I don't get a really good lead today's a failure. That's not the case. Focus your first 45 days on improving and learning as much as you possibly can. That's exactly what I did. That's one of the main reasons why I believe that I'm here now. So with that, I will see you in the next video, where we're going to talk about my full schedule when I first got started, so that maybe you can draw inspiration from that or fit it around to your schedule. But we're going to talk about that in the next video. So I'll see you there.